Real people having real conversations. Let's go beyond the surface and find the pieces of the past that make people who they truly are. This is the Blueprint Banter. Welcome to the show. This is the Blueprint Banter Podcast. I am your host, Derek Lyons, and with me today is a guy that has one of the best shoe games I've ever seen when it comes to golf shoes. We met on a golf trip. He is a competitor of ours, so it's even funny that we let him walk in the door. But today with me is Andy Ray, co-owner of American Dream Exteriors. Thanks for coming on, Andy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So I think today this is going to be a fun one, right? We are competitors. We're in the same market. I think we probably both think of each other as friends first. We have a lot of things in common, obviously, with running a business, being partners with somebody that runs a business, family life, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, I know technically competitor is probably the right word, but that's not really how I feel. So
Yeah.
I feel like we're just in the industry together. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. Iron sharpens iron type of mentality.
Yep.
To give people a little bit of perspective, we both were using the same supplier a couple years ago. That supplier took us on a golf trip as a thank you for the business we were doing. There was several people from the Midwest area. I guess there was some Nebraska tied in and Wisconsin too, with some different reps.
Yep.
So we sort of just ended up in basically a shuttle on the way to where we were staying and started shooting the shit. And then there you go.
Met at 6 a.m. in the airport.
Well, yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And then, hopped on the plane, flew down to North Carolina, hit the liquor store on the way there, and Nate bought us a 12-pack. It was gone before we made it there.
That's always a good way to, just break the ice and get to know somebody.
And then I think we just hopped right on the course, right?
Yeah.
We unloaded our clubs and we were playing.
Yeah, we got to North Carolina and, got off the plane. We pretty much just went straight to Mid Pines and played, didn't we? That first night.
We had a caddy.
Yeah.
I think the first shot, T1, or the hole one, I think I went 2 fairways to the right.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
About to take out another group.
Yeah, for people that don't know, Andy can hit the absolute cover off the ball. We don't always know where it's going.
No, it's usually going to go right.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah.
And then I get kind of creative on the next couple shots and see if I can get back up there.
So that trip, honestly, just talk a little bit about that. Andy Gibson was our caddy's name.
Yep.
Still have his number. Like he came over and hung out with us that night or whatever. I think on a golf trip like that, especially on a course kind of that caliber, I thought Mid Pines was one of the, obviously Pine Needles was awesome, but Mid Pines super nice. And if you don't know how your way to navigate that thing,
no,
like you really need a good caddy. Even though at that time, I think I was probably like an 87 handicap. I don't even know if it goes that high, but
our caddy didn't say a word the whole, our first guy, he didn't say a word the whole time. I think it was because Gooding was with us and he just talked the whole time.
Okay.
But, I don't know if he even caddied the rest of the trip on that. I think he was done after that one. So he got his money and left. And I think I hit out of, a lot of pine needles.
A lot of pine straw. Hitting out of pine straw is interesting too. If nobody's ever done it, that might be listening. It's slippery. It's hard to get good footing. It's easier to make contact than you would think. Yeah. I think it's just the fact that you can move some pine straw like 2 feet away from the ball and it's all kind of interconnected. Right. Next thing you know, it's sliding. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
The pros obviously make it look a lot easier than it is. But
yeah. So the first day was pretty rough. But the next day was a fun day. That's when I think we paired up.
Yeah.
And we tore it up, man.
Yeah. Tear it up. You hit it off. I think you can obviously quickly tell when you start talking to somebody if you have things you're going to kind of connect on and you start talking about business and then personal life and where things kind of tie in. Usually know pretty soon. But so anyway, that trip was awesome. Let's talk a little bit about just what your current so you're co-owner, American Dream Exteriors. Mm-hmm. You guys obviously do primary residential construction exterior work.
Yep.
What does your day-to-day, and obviously being owner, like we all wear different hats at different times, but what's kind of like your typical day-to-day or your involvement look like with the company?
So my day, like So my whole thing is just being productive, not so much busy as more productive because
Yeah.
I can, if I'm having things kind of scheduled out, it's easy for me when things change to just move and put, different parts of pieces in different places. So
Yeah.
I used to have a pretty balanced schedule throughout the day. So I usually try to go to the office first thing if I don't have any appointments lined up. That way I can check on the schedule, my jobs, other people's jobs, what jobs are going on, kind of have an idea of where everybody's going. That way, if there is a problem, I can at least kind of have an idea of where that problem's going to be. So,
When you say check on the schedule, do you mean primarily like the actual production schedule of
yeah,
jobs you
kind of
guys?
what we're doing that week,
Yeah.
that day, because whether a job didn't get finished the day before, and that moves on to that day, it's going to push things back, and then
Yeah.
then maybe there's rain on Saturday, so
Yeah.
you gotta just kind of focus on where we're at every week. So
Yeah.
it's and it's on my phone too. So I mean,
Yeah.
we got guys that change it when it changes, so it's easy to keep track of it. But for the most part, try to get to the office in the morning, just get a little office time in scheduled, and then for me, I like to be out in the field.
Yeah.
I'll go crazy if I'm in the office too long. So it's either my appointments, running materials, helping guys out, things like that, or just checking in on things.
You
So
still climb ladders, still get on
I
roofs.
still do. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's hard to give that up. I don't know why, but it's just I think that's kind of what got me into it. So it's hard
Yeah.
to to basically get off a ladder and get behind more of a owner role. I guess still feel like a salesman.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I talk about it every once in a while. There's days, and then sometimes days turn into weeks where, like in the ownership capacity, it feels like you don't actually get the ability to like check a box off,
Right.
like just complete a task and
Yeah.
then feel good about completing it.
Yeah.
Like there's times where we're just constantly looking forward to the next, maybe next week or the next year or whatever, and it's like sometimes I just want to go accomplish a thing and
Right.
complete it, and then like feel good about it and then
Right.
move on. So.
Yeah, and I try to do that. I try to just three main things that I know I need to get done that day, and just
Yeah.
if I get it done at 10 o'clock at night, at least I got it done. But I try to knock it out early. That way,
Yep.
whatever happens after that, at least I got those three things done. And some of it might just be picking my kid up.
Right.
It could be
Yep.
something that simple that it has to be at 3 o'clock. So that's just priority. So
Is that something that, so, I mean, is it fair to say then, like the way you schedule your time, because this is important right now. I'm actually working with a business coach. He was the first guest on this podcast.
Alan,
Yeah, Alan Weaver.
we've talked.
Okay.
And
Awesome,
yeah,
dude.
so we haven't had like we talked right before kind of the season went
Okay.
crazy, so we haven't had time to connect. So
Yeah.
I was just like, didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you, but yeah,
that's awesome though. I mean, he's an incredible dude. And one of the first things we started talking about was just kind of, first of all, let's identify what it is you're doing. So one of the first exercises that he had me do once I got on board was just document your day. So like literally everything you do, like what time did you get up and get ready? Like what time did you drop kids off at school if you took kids, or like what time did you eat lunch? Like
yeah,
just document, and it basically just shows you, hey, I'm spending time doing this, this, and this,
yeah,
and is that
right,
contributing to what I want it to,
right,
So that was fairly eye-opening to me, especially just focusing on the time that you're potentially
right,
losing in certain areas, right? But the other side of that is he talks a lot about, in our industry, it's easy for guys to kind of make excuses of like, well, in the construction world, things just come up that you have to
right,
take care of, right? And so what I'm kind of hearing you say is you sort of schedule yourself. So, hey, I know I can control like this part of my day,
mm-hmm,
and I'm going to go crush things in the morning.
right,
And then I know stuff's going to come
right.
up. So is that how you kind of
So
approach it?
yeah, my morning's the same every day, like from wake up to 8 o'clock.
Okay.
It's the same every day. So if I can make it to 10 before things change, then that's great. Then I'm gonna get a lot of stuff done by 10 a.m.
Okay.
But sometimes I'll get a call at 7 o'clock, and so it's
Yeah.
things have already changed before like I haven't made it to the office, and things are already changing. So that's kind of how Tuesday was. I mean, we had a rain day. Basically, it was supposed to rain, and I was supposed to be in Waterloo all day. So I talked to the crew, said, "Hey, let's push it back a day. There's no chance of rain the next day." Well, now that full day that was in Waterloo is moved back a day. So now everything that was Wednesday, I
Yeah.
have to figure out either bring that up to Tuesday, but that doesn't always work.
Right.
So 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm trying to reschedule my day, which
Yeah.
it worked out, and yesterday worked out in Waterloo. So,
Cool.
but if you're prepared, I feel like,
Yeah.
my, my wake up was the same. So, I was already awake when everything was changing. So,
Right. Yeah. Imagine if you would have just,
rolled out of bed at 8 o'clock and
yeah,
oh
just expecting
shit,
a,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
What is your typical wake up?
alarm set for 4:15,
Okay. Do you gym in the morning?
5 a.m.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that I mean, for me, I guess I have kind of my own reasons of like why I like to work out at certain times of the day, but is it very much just like you like to just get up and get going right away type of deal?
I've tried to do it in later in the day, but just phone calls and like I can't focus. So I
Yeah.
don't get a whole lot of, interruptions at 5 a.m. So
Yeah.
I get at least an hour in and
Do you
you
work
know,
out like just alone? Do you do a class? Is it?
just by myself. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I've done it different ways. I tend to just like I don't like to talk to anybody when I'm in the gym. AirPods in, I'm doing my
yeah, I
thing.
know.
Maybe a head nod or two,
And
but
I feel like a dick sometimes because people are like, I'm just like, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, but I
Well,
want to get it done. So,
yeah. And to your point, like that's your controlled time,
right.
right? So now if all of a sudden I start talking to you about whatever for
I
a half
know.
hour, now
And
I'm
now
yeah.
schedule's off,
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, I take my youngest one to daycare before I head in, so that's all part of the routine too. So,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
her alarm set, so it's pretty steady. Weekends are a wild card because I don't really know, where we're gonna be, like what
Yeah.
the weekend is. We typically try to take the weekends off of work
Okay.
just because a lot of suppliers are closed. We don't want to interrupt customers' weekends and stuff like that. So, and it's good to give the crews like a break.
Yeah.
They can get overworked pretty easy. So,
So for people that maybe listening that don't know, I mean the primary your guys' labor force is primarily 1099, I assume like ours is.
hmm
Kind of W-2 sales staff or project managers.
yeah, we have 10 employees.
Okay.
And that's production, sales, operations, secretary. So, and
Yeah.
then we have all sub crews.
And so if you're running say a roofing job that maybe like not all materials that we use are potentially available like at a box
Right.
store that would be
Yeah.
open on a
Yeah.
Saturday and Sunday. And so yeah, for somebody listening that maybe doesn't understand, if you get a job going that's on a Saturday or Sunday and you tear into somebody's house and all of a sudden realize that you don't have a certain product you need, you're kind of SOL.
Right.
So
And then you're putting the job at risk along with the customer. So,
yeah.
there's we've we've done it before, and it's just hard to work around a weekend, anyways, with people. They all
Yeah.
have lives that they're trying to live too. So,
There's an added amount of pressure being in South Central Iowa. Um, we obviously have seasonal work, and so there is when the sun shines, make hay kind of mentality at times, and
right.
it can be tough if it rains. If it rains Monday, Tuesday,
Yeah.
Wednesday, and Saturday, Sunday looks good, it's like golly,
Yeah, I
it'd
know.
be nice to make that up.
It is. It's hard, but we want to keep a certain level of, you know, quality, and we
Yeah,
want the good customer service. And to them, tearing up their house on a weekend, some people care and some people
yeah,
don't. So,
that's true.
you know, it could be their kid's birthday party that weekend, and then
Yeah,
we don't want to interrupt that.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah, there's a lot of contributing factors for sure that come into it, and back to your point too of kind of being regular and being schedule oriented. You just if you start throwing in weekends and all of a sudden now somebody's tired because
right,
the project manager was out Saturday and Sunday and now they're not as good on Monday and
right,
whatever, right? There's a
right.
bunch of different things. So
Yeah, and my schedule has really kind of been more structured the last few years now that we got a more parts and pieces in place too. Allows me to be a little bit more scheduled, so that helps.
yeah, I mean, right people, right seats. Is that fair
Right.
to
Yeah.
say? You
Yeah.
start getting
Yep.
people that you trust and
Trust,
yeah.
and I don't need to tell them, hey, be here. But I mean, it's already, they know.
Let's jump into that a little bit more specifically. I want to talk a little bit about just your ownership in the company, but kind of your management style, I guess. It's something that I admire talking with like your employees specifically. I think you do an incredible job. But what did that look like for you being somebody that was kind of field oriented before and then bringing people in to come work for your company? It's not easy just to let go of some of those duties.
Right.
So, I mean, was that something that you just kind of had to work on over time? Did it come natural
I'm
or
still working on it.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
a lot of it is just lead by example type. you know, if they come train with me for a week, they can kind of see, my process, and then they at least know how I like things done, and it's just easier for them to see if they're with me, I guess,
Yeah.
than to just try and, hey, do it this way. Here's a book, figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Grant has a different type of, you know, leadership management style than I
Yeah.
do. I think works out well.
Yep.
He's more of a good trainer as far as like office training. He can teach them how to sell in a classroom,
Yeah.
and I'm more of out in the field, so it kind of works out well.
Cool. I mean, Sean and I definitely, with the Showtime Homes scenario, are kind of the same way in the fact that, um, I would say I'm more of like the energy hype. Hey, how you doing? Like, what's going on in your day to day? Whereas he's like the more organized. If somebody needs to go to him and ask, about payroll stuff or 401k
Right.
contributions and just kind of that and like walking them through those portals and different things online. I mean, he does that much better than I do. So
Yeah.
finding your kind of lane in that deal is definitely important.
Yeah,
But
and it takes a while to kind of to figure that out too. So we
yeah,
naturally lean towards what one person's better at than the other one, and it's not even something you not really have to talk
it's like
about.
an unspoken.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And so, you know, I think 2017 is when we started.
Okay,
So had a few years to kind of figure things out. So,
it's flown by. I bet.
oh yeah, it's been crazy. So,
Yeah.
some days I miss those early days where it was just Grant myself. So,
There was a lot of liberty. There's a lot of liberty in just knowing that, hey, if I I don't want to use the word fail, but if I have a rough day or a rough week, it's only kind of impacting me and my
right,
family. There's a certain weight that it comes. It seems like when you get employees and you kind of have this train rolling, it's like, man, if I one hiccup, it feels like there's a lot of lives at stake
yeah.
here. So I mean, it's definitely heavy.
And it was, COVID kind of, and like taught us how to deal with that in a way, just because nothing was, you know, we didn't know. There's a lot of uncertainty on what could happen.
Yeah.
So, when you have employees, you want to make sure that they're taken care of first, so you don't lay anybody off or anything like that.
Right.
So, as an owner, you take a step back on what you're making so that
Yeah.
they get paid. So,
Yeah.
then you kind of grow from there and say, okay, well, we can figure this out now that we've survived one of the hardest years.
Right.
So, but
Yeah.
we got kind of lucky during COVID as far as us because there's the derecho finished at the end of the year and there's a couple
Hmm.
other good storms. So,
Yeah.
and we were able to figure out kind of how to work through the system as far as like no contact and everything like that.
Yeah.
And we were willing to do it. A lot of people were just willing not to work.
It was a wild time in that regard, and obviously being American Dream Exteriors, you guys are working on the outside of people's
Right.
homes. Um, there was a lot of also advantage to that versus being maybe somebody that does kitchen remodels or
Right.
bathroom remodels where you do have to be
Right.
inside somebody's home. We could literally just send electronic
Right.
contracts and would never even have to be in somebody's
Right.
house, right? So
Yeah, and you could talk on the phone still, you could FaceTime if you had to. Um, but what I did find out that kind of separated us was that we were still willing to go out and do the work and
yeah,
meet with people and still try to. I think a lot of people just kind of fell back and just said, "Well, we'll just wait." Where we were like, "Well, let's not wait. Let's just
yeah,
go, and we'll push the work and what we can do to the max, what
yeah.
we can do, and then we'll just at this point, let's just push hard."
Yeah, and for somebody that's watching this or listening that doesn't know the event that we're talking about, it was essentially a land hurricane. That
Oh yeah,
which I personally had no idea that the term derecho was even a thing. Nobody knew how to pronounce it. I don't even know if
yeah,
I'm pronouncing it
right.
correctly right now. But yeah, that came through in August of 2020, and I had actually just started Showtime like 5 days prior to that, so it was just like it was
Right.
wild timing, but the storm was significant, and what Andy's talking about a little bit is like people had missing portions of their roof. They had shingles missing. Like there were things that although COVID was obviously a time where nobody really knew what was going on, you wanted to do things as safe as you could and out of respect for different people's feelings towards it. But the reality was like there was work that had to be done,
Right.
otherwise, yeah, their house was compromised,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So
So especially in the Cedar Rapids area too.
yeah,
Like I feel like that was one of the worst areas that we'd been to, and we've done some work there prior that year because there was a hailstorm earlier in
April
that year.
April
Yeah.
7th, I think. Yeah.
And so we had kind of relationship with some people up there, and so when that happened, we sent a couple guys up there to just like help tarp and fix you know temporary fixes until things got sorted out. But even then, there's so much work here. It's like, where do we go?
Yeah, you have in the construction game, it's kind of difficult, and especially when there's an environment like that where people absolutely need the immediate service, like you're talking about, like tarping in and drying in roofs and stuff. And it's like, well, but I have customers that already gave us money here,
Right.
but maybe their house is in a way that it's not leaking, it's
Right.
still sound, but they just wanted to replace their siding
Right.
maybe. And it's like, how do I, do I have that conversation with them, or is that fair to them to put them off,
And we did have that conversation with some people, and they were more than willing just to wait.
Yeah.
But the problem was it happened so late in the year that they'd already been waiting, and a lot of things too were it was hard to get material at that
It
time.
was,
And so
yeah.
if they were waiting on a color, they're waiting 2 months for it, and then it finally comes in. It's like, oh, hey, by the way, would you be willing to wait another month?
Right.
And so a lot of people are pretty understanding, but some people we just did it, and they were in line. So
Kudos to you guys for having the conversation too. There's construction companies out there that would just put people off and not even call them, or
I
just make
know
excuses or whatever,
it's
right?
it's hard to have those tough conversations, but I think in the end it just relieves a lot of stress from having that conversation as the person that needs to have it, and then the person that you're having it with. It helps them understand kind of where we're at. So
Absolutely.
it sucks, but once it's done, I think it's just all the stress is gone, and
Yeah.
you schedule it.
So I kind of want to switch gears a little bit. Typically, what I like to do, and when we're talking about people, and obviously tying it to Blueprint, very construction oriented. But when you talk about somebody's kind of life and like how we become who we are, and you talk about the things that kind of make us up as humans, the blueprint to your life, if you will. It's fun to kind of work backwards, go to childhood, and then we just kind of follow the progression, right? And then I'd like to talk a little bit more in depth too about kind of how you and Grant started American Dream and where all that eventually obviously led to, like we're talking about now. But let's go back to Andy Ray, like childhood. Where were you born? I mean,
I grew up.
parents, split parents, like how that
No,
whole
my
deal
parents are
worked.
still married. So I grew up on the south side of Des Moines, just over by the airport. I have an older brother. He's 2 years older than me. So we grew up. It was kind of middle class, lower
Yeah.
to middle class. My dad was a roofer, so
Okay.
things were different. 40 years ago, roofing it wasn't quite what it is now.
Mhm.
There wasn't quite the insurance game and stuff like that. So, but he did a lot of like special. He did tile. He
Okay.
did slate roofs. He did flat roofing. So he did a lot of the
More the craftsman kind
yeah.
of, yeah.
So, and my uncles and everybody, they all did siding and construction. So I grew
Okay.
up in it. So that's basically how we made money as kids. We just helped job site cleanup and stuff like that. So
How
we've
old
always
were
been around it.
How old were you when you kind of like that first day where dad's like, "Yo, Andy, we're going."
I mean, I'm sure he drugged me around when I was 5 or 6, just sitting in the car in the
Yeah.
truck or whatever. Probably illegal, no seatbelts, sitting
Oh
in the
yeah, I'm
front.
sure. Yeah.
And so, I think I was probably like 10 to 12 before I actually like got to climb a ladder and
Yeah.
slide them shingles and you know carry a bundle up or something like that. So
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the age where you're capable to do a lot of things. I mean, you're still a little buckwheat, right? Like, I
right,
mean, I think I was like in middle school when I probably started like driving tractor, like baler, and like doing that kind of stuff on the farm, where you start getting involved. But,
yeah. So we did that on the weekends. I mean, he would work. He worked for wood roofing, so it's still a company here in town. So
okay,
he retired from there, I think 10 years ago, something like that.
gotcha.
So yeah, so that it was actually a union based job. So he
Okay,
retired on his pension, and now he's full retired.
yeah,
So
that's awesome.
his knees were pretty shot, so he got out of there as fast as he could.
Growing up in on the south side,
hmm
what was like daily life like? I mean,
Summers were great. There was a swimming pool just a block away, so there was probably 5 or 6 kids about my age in my neighborhood.
yeah,
We all just rode bikes and went to the pool. It was, there was no cell phones. There was no. It
right,
was basically come home and my dad whistled and that was
yeah,
about it. I mean, we just ran the neighborhood and
like dinner's ready, and
yeah,
yeah. That whole like parenting by committee thing, I think that's neat when we're looking forward to it in the new neighborhood that we're going to be moving into, is hoping that, like, as kids kind of grow up together and you have that like almost like
Oh
parenting by
yeah.
committee type feel,
I'm still friends with the kids that we grew up with, so
Awesome.
yeah, so I still talk to them. Not quite as much, but I mean, we've all grown up and went different ways, but still keep in touch.
Yeah,
So
that's cool. Do you play sports and stuff when you were in grade school? And
yeah, yeah, I played football, basketball, baseball growing up, and then in high school, I just mainly focused on baseball. So
yeah,
I went to Lincoln High School on the
yeah,
south side there. So now we moved up to Bondurant. So
yeah. What when you graduated high school, was it since you grew up with all that trades influence, was it one of those things where when you graduated you're like, I'm gonna be in construction of some sort, or was there
no, I wanted to be done with construction. I hated it. By the
okay?
time I got to that age, I was tired of helping my dad on the weekends and
Yeah,
spending my weekends carrying shingles. And so I was like, dude, I'm never gonna roof. I'm like, this sucks. Like,
yeah.
didn't want to do anything to do with it. So I bounced around out of school. I didn't. College wasn't for me, so
Amen.
didn't even go down that road. Worked like for Nationwide and MediaCom, just different avenues, trying to find, just trying to find my way,
Yeah,
basically. So
cool. What did so personal life wise, I think it's always interesting to kind of tie family life. You're trying to figure out who you are. And for context, even like me in my mid 20s, um, kind of same deal, right? Like college wasn't for me. I dropped out after a semester and a half, worked a couple different jobs. You're kind of at that time, you're trying to, in my mind, like figure out who you are a little bit. You're trying to figure out, hey, where is my place?
mhm,
What am I good at? What's going to make me a good living?
right,
There's a lot of things in your early to mid 20s that's just like you don't know shit.
yeah. And for me, actually, I had my oldest daughter when I was 20,
Okay.
so I have a daughter who's 25 right now. So I had her when I was 20, so then it was full scramble mode. Like, what am
Yeah.
I gonna do? Like, I need to work. I'm not really necessarily don't have a degree in 25 years ago, college was you got to have a degree basically to get,
Yeah.
certain status that you wanted for work for the most part, unless you were in trades or anything like that. But even then it was starting to be like, hey, if you have a degree, you're going to start a little bit higher.
Okay.
This is what it felt like anyway. So, and then I had my son 2 years after that. So, by the time I was 24, I had two kids.
Wow.
So I was really trying to figure out a lot then.
Yeah.
And, it was hard and you're just kinda lost and you're just trying to get it figured out. So,
Were you married at the time or no?
nope, we had the same girlfriend,
Yeah.
but yeah, she was actually this is all after 9/11. So she was in the National Guard.
Oh.
So she actually, um, went overseas for, I think, 16 months.
Oh shoot.
So I had the kids by myself.
Jeez, oh
So trying to figure
peace. You're
that
trying
out.
to figure out like where your place is professionally.
Yeah. And so, it was, just figuring a lot of things out then. And then around 2009, 2010 is when things started to shift more towards this area,
Yeah.
towards the back to the construction.
Okay.
So,
What did that look like? Was it kind of was it just like somebody you knew that was like, "Hey, Andy, like I'd like to come try this as a job," or was it kind of you just feeling like, "Hey, I need to get back in the trades world"?
yeah, it was just a conversation with my dad. So
Yeah.
he's like, hey, if I still got connections, in the industry. If you wanted to either, maybe work for a company or if you want to work for a supplier, he's like, I could probably get you in somewhere if you wanted to get back into this avenue. And so I said, okay. And one of his good friends is David Reese, was a salesman at ABC Supply.
Okay.
And so they had conversations, and ended up just starting at ABC Supply, just in the yard, just started
Okay.
working in the yard. So I did that for a couple years, and then I worked my way to the inside sales part of things, selling to contractors.
Yeah.
I was in the warehouse meeting all the guys and everything like that, and then I became inside sales, and then eventually became outside sales.
So when you started working there, you would have been like 30-ish or early
Yeah,
30s
yeah,
somewhere. Gotcha. So just yeah, I mean, grinded it out and just prove your worth type of
yeah.
mentality.
I just said, you know what, I'm just gonna start here, start in the warehouse, and we'll just see where it goes.
I think so. I mean, just to touch on that a little bit, uh, I I don't like it when people just say like nobody wants to work anymore. whatever. I just disagree with that. I mean, you've seen the young people that we have in our office, and they
Right.
all kind of crush in their own right. And
Oh yeah.
but I do think there's a mentality shift where we're in a weird time where college isn't. It's not imperative that you have to have a degree. Obviously, helps if you have a specific trade you're going into or whatever. But there is kind of it doesn't seem like people are as willing to just start out ground level and work their way up maybe anymore.
Yeah, I think what
And I
I
hate to
mean, I know.
generalize.
I
It's
do
just
too
I really
because
don't
I
like
feel
to be
like,
that person, but
just interviewing people,
yeah,
I feel like people want to start out making $100,000 a year. Like,
right,
I'm like, that's just not how it works. Like, you
right.
have to earn your, kind of earn your way up. And, I feel like if you just show up and work, you can get further than people might realize,
Yeah.
you know?
My first job pounding nails, I was working for Phil Schragen. I've mentioned it on this before, but I think I want to say he started me at $12 an hour, and this would have been in 2012. Um, and I told him I was like, I don't know a ton about construction, and I hate heights. Other than that, I'll work my ass off for you. And he's like, well, we'll work on the heights part, and I can teach you whatever you need to know in
Right,
construction in order like to work for me.
right,
Like I can teach you whatever I need you to do, and the first week when we got done, we were in the job site trailer, like putting stuff away on Friday, and he goes, "I'm gonna bump you to 14 after 5 days of work,"
right,
right? And his big thing was, and I don't want to say that as like oh my god, I was awesome, but it was more or less like he started me where he knew bottom would be. I was okay with that because to your point, I just knew like, hey, he's gonna see that
right.
I'm a go getter,
Hmm.
and so it was more just like him saying, "Hey, I'm willing to bump you up and continue to bump you, but you need to prove it first."
Right,
And so speaking of what you're talking about is, yeah, it's like it's kind of that understanding where like things are going to be okay. I'm not going to dangle a carrot, but like I can't just start you at the
right.
ceiling. So
And I think you got to expect that going into it. Like, I don't think you can have the thing, well, in 3 months, I'm going to be here. 3 months. I mean, I think you just got to work until someone says, hey, you're doing a good job. Let's see what you can do at this role. And I think there's nothing wrong with just working at the bottom until you get that call, basically.
yeah, and there's so many years to work.
Right.
Like, I mean, a lot of times we feel this pressure. I mean, I think we're both relatively young, in doing what we're doing. I mean, a
Right.
lot of the guys that are doing what we're doing are, 65, 70 years old, right? Like we have a lot of years till we get there.
Yeah, I think so too.
So, I mean, there's plenty of time, I guess. Like if there's a lesson learned or anything to be picked up from this is like it's okay to start somewhere.
Right.
And then, like Mike Rowe says, like you don't have to necessarily follow your passion, but be passionate about what you're doing.
Exactly.
Like, so,
That was my thing is no matter where I was going to work, I was just going to work hard, and then whatever happens, happens. And then
yeah.
I'll dictate where I want to go after that.
Yeah.
So if you're just mulling around, just not being productive, you don't really get to just dictate anything then.
Right.
So,
Do you think there's a difference with somebody who um let me preface it a little bit. Like since we didn't go to college and graduate with a degree and kind of follow this path of this is the profession I'm going to be in and I'm going to put the work in and study and pass these tests or whatever in order to get there, we kind of took the hard knocks route, right? And so I often wonder, and this is more of a question, like I often wonder myself is it's like, do I just think the way I do because like that's the path I took? Or had I went to college and graduated with the degree, would I be more open to people just kind of wanting to land in an area where they're already hitting the ground running? Like
yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, I know some people that, went to college and, that even they went to college and got a degree, they didn't even start in that field that they got a degree. And
yeah,
they,
right.
I think if you're just a hard worker, you're a hard worker.
Yeah,
And I think some people want to take the easy road and they don't want to actually put the time and the work into it and they expect things.
right.
But, it's just not really the case. You could probably ask anybody that's successful and they'll say, we had to start and work our way up.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
anybody that's, on a platform, I guarantee you they'd say the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. And there's obviously like you know this as good as anybody when you have kids and you have a family that you're trying to provide for and I mean there's a lot of weight there too and a lot of expectations that now it's not just my expectations for myself and where I want to go, but my kids expect a
Yeah.
certain level out of me, my
Hmm.
wife or significant other whatever expects something out of me. So yeah, I guess having expectations for yourself is one thing, and then like you add to that, and it's like, hey, you got to work hard.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think even, when I go home, I'm not just, "Oh, I'm going to sit on the couch and take a nap." I mean, you're
yeah,
still working when you get home. I mean, it's whether it's
yeah,
with the kids playing in the backyard or picking up or whatever. I mean, my wife works, a ton of hours too, so I wouldn't expect her to
Let's
get
talk.
home.
Let's talk about Kristen a little bit. When
hmm
did you meet her?
2010.
2010.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like I said, that's right when 2009, 2010. That's like I said, things started to change a little
Yeah.
bit. So yeah, I met her through mutual friends. We were both kind of seeing somebody else at the time, and
Yeah.
for whatever reason, we just had a kind of connection. So
Yeah.
and then we had our first daughter, in 2010, and so then I think that was a lot that changed kind of my mindset as well too.
Right.
So
Yeah. I mean, now it's like, okay, you put the work in, and I don't want to speak for you, but thinking about it in the sense of you put the work in, like this is kind of my chance to start, like not necessarily start over, but like start a new path for where I'm gonna head.
yeah, do things
Like,
different now.
yeah,
I
yeah,
feel like it wasn't like I got a second chance or anything like that, but it was
yeah,
like I'm just gonna, you know, 30 now. It's different when you're 20 because
yeah,
you feel like you're 20, you got everything ahead of you.
right,
Feel like you're 30, you still got a lot of time ahead of you, but it's a good time to make a change if you're gonna make a change.
yeah,
So, and she was a nurse, so I was, comfortable trying to make changes with, you know, because she was doing pretty well. So
yeah, yeah.
and
Financially
that helps.
speaking,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure,
So
absolutely, yeah. I mean, whenever you can do something together like that, I mean, it makes things a lot easier. Um, I mean, you work your way up through ABC, and then you guys are together. You have your first, so you guys have two kids together,
yeah.
right?
hmm
Both girls, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and you kind of go through that stage then, like through ABC. When does it come time where you're at ABC, and Grant was too, right?
So Grant was there for like 5 months.
Okay,
So I think it was right around 2016, I think, when he was there. So he signed on or got hired as an outside salesman.
okay,
I was still in the transition from inside to outside at the time.
okay,
So that's how I met Grant. Was at ABC when I was there.
okay. And then like how long is it then, like time lapse wise? Well, I guess 17. So it wasn't that long after that then.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
So we'd had lunch a few times, and me and Grant hit it off pretty well as just coworkers. He's
Yep.
somebody he golfed. And we kind of always,
Golf. It's
I know,
always
right?
golf
Always,
calls. Yeah,
spend a lot of time on a golf course with somebody
for
driving.
sure.
So, um, we'd had conversations about starting something. Um, and he was a little bit more ready to do it than I was because I had kind of built something at ABC. Felt
Yeah.
like I've put some time in, and I wasn't really ready to move on that yet.
Yeah.
Just because of the base I had into it and the relationships that I grew, there. So,
Absolutely.
and it was a good job, and I got to a point where I was pretty comfortable, and it was secure, like it was a secure job. So,
Right.
but I had a few months where I felt like I worked really hard and I didn't get paid for what I was worth,
Yeah.
and so we had one more conversation, and then we said, "Fuck it."
Yeah. What was that? Yeah, because I mean, I just got goosebumps, dude. I love that transition mentally, and when you are out on the ledge, and then you just like, dude, like take that step
Yeah.
off. It's an incredible ride. But um, what was the mindset like? And I think this is very interesting. I think a lot of times, especially in the trades world, it kind of starts off with if you're pounding nails for somebody, and then it's like, well, I like my boss is making too much money. I want to go do my own thing and make my own money. And you see a lot of guys flounder because maybe it's just more about the financial end of it than it is about creating an actual business.
hmm
So what was like your guys' mindset like? I mean, was it immediately like you start talking about it and you're like, hey, like if I was gonna do it, I would set it up this way, and this is how I want to take care of people. And like, what did that look like?
Yeah. Well, we kind of had an idea of just kind of we had the luxury of kind of seeing other companies,
Yeah,
and I watched other companies grow from a one man show to because I sold to them,
right.
and I knew him personally, so I could see the growth in him. So I kind of felt like I had an advantage with that. My dad being in the industry, so I felt like I had some knowledge, and then I knew some crews, and I
Yeah,
kind of had like a pretty solid base.
right.
And so I think, and this was November 2017, so we're heading into the winter,
Yeah.
too. So it's like we got to figure out something
Yeah, we have 4
for the
months. We're
spring.
not gonna
Yeah,
make any money.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we had time to basically model what we wanted to do, how we wanted to do it, and start working on different, ideas or whatever. So,
Yeah.
everything we've done together has been controlled. Like, it hasn't been like real, winging it or anything like that. Like, our growth has all been controlled. We know growing years and we'll plan for growing years.
Yeah.
When we hire more salespeople, we realize there's going to be a bit of a growth to it.
Yeah.
Our roles as salesmen might fall back because we're training and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
everything's
and
been pretty controlled.
that is important. I think there's a lot of people that again, and to go back to that, if you're just revenue minded and you're thinking, and there's a lot of people in the construction world that are just like more
Right.
salesmen, better sales training,
Right.
sales, and it's like, well, hey, to your point, the more you grow and the more you sell, the more people you have to take care of now,
Right.
the more production problems, or not necessarily problems, but just production things you're going to run into. And do we have somebody to support that? Do we have somebody to do warranty follow-ups
Yeah.
and all of that stuff?
You don't
So
want to lose customer. You don't want to lose the quality.
yeah,
If you outgrow your plan, then you're going to lose quality because you're trying to do too many things and you're just not going to be able to follow up. You're not going to be able to check on customers or anything like that. So we didn't want to lose that because we felt like that's how we got our referrals was based on one
right.
job led to 2 more jobs, which led to 5 more jobs. So that's we don't advertise a lot. I mean, we have our trucks wrapped,
Yeah.
but a lot of everything we do is referral based.
Well, so I mean, you use the term controlled. I've always kind of just used intentional, and both of them mean the same thing. But I think that's crucial to have a plan. Obviously, it sounds stupid, but I mean, if you're just revenue minded, like you really can run into problems. So just understanding and seeing and having the ability to, like for you, being at ABC and working with clients, you probably saw that every day too.
Yeah.
You're in their office and it's like, oh man, we have all these you know, nobody went and checked for nails after we
Right.
got done with Todd and Susie's roof, and
Well, I would see them all come back for repairs or, they'd all have
yeah,
to come back and be like, "Hey, didn't we send that job out? And you're coming back to get 6 more square. What happened?" And they'd be like,
right,
"Oh, well, we did this bad. We have to fix it." It's like, I'm like, "Oh, that sucks. Like, I don't want that to happen."
yep,
So, and things do happen that are out of your control that you do have to go fix to take care of the customer. But if you can foresee a lot of issues before they start, that helps.
okay. So in terms of starting American Dream,
Hmm.
what was Grant doing? So I mean, he was at ABC for a little while. What else was his kind of like background that helped?
So he's from Southwest Iowa. He's from Lenox, Iowa, and he sold for Morton Buildings.
Oh, okay,
And his dad was a builder. His dad was a home builder
gotcha.
growing up. So
So just
it was,
trades
yeah,
dudes,
yep.
yeah,
And so he didn't know a lot about the roofing aspect about it when he first started. But he's pretty smart. He picks it up like that.
yeah,
But he's real good at sales. He's really good at talking to customers,
yep,
real good at in home, telling people, having a vision on how the job's going to unfold and explaining that to people.
yep,
So, I mean, that was his strong suit. And mine was more technical.
nuts
And
and
so
bolts, yeah,
I could pick up on what he's doing, because we would just go to sales together. I mean,
yep,
we would just, ride along, and because we
yeah,
weren't like we were getting all these calls, we were like, oh, you got to go. I mean, we were getting one or two
and you got to close
leads,
them,
and yeah, so
yeah.
we'd both go to him, and learned a lot by watching him, and I guess he learned a few things by me. So
Yeah. So you had, I mean, you had your dad that you obviously watched and helped growing up. You had the experience at ABC, and then your plethora of other jobs
yeah,
too that you kind of, you pick up parts and pieces from, I guess. Was there anybody, I mean, there's one thing to be a tactician, right? And make sure that the roofs get installed correctly and all of that stuff. But in terms of managing AR, in terms of managing accounts payable and all that stuff, did you have like a mentor or anybody in your life at that time that, or was it just kind of figured out as we go type of
yeah.
deal?
I mean, it was just kind of figuring it out. We did talk to Grant with the SWIC for college, and he graduated in business. So we actually did reach out to his business teacher,
Okay.
just kind of set up how to get a LLC and all
Yeah.
that. We didn't know any of that part of it.
Right.
We knew how to put a roof on, but we didn't know how to run it.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
and then we met my tax guy at the time was real insightful on kind of how to run QuickBooks, and he actually hooked us up with a bookkeeper that
Okay.
he just hired. So
Okay.
we kind of grew together with the
Yep.
bookkeeper. So that helped out a lot too, just kind of learning how to the tax side of things and budgets and stuff like that.
Yep.
So I mean, if you know, willing to learn certain things that you weren't necessarily planning
Have
on learning,
to.
yeah.
Right.
So
I
I
just
mean,
I talked to a guy the other day that he had an idea for a business, and it was around like the angler or like fishing world,
Yeah.
and his biggest thing was, and the reason why he reached out, he actually put a post up on Twitter or on X, is where I saw it, and I just commented. But his thing was, he's like, man, I don't. There's some things that I know or don't know that's like feels like it's holding me back from getting started. And when I talked to him on the phone, like he's like super passionate about
Right.
this idea, and he didn't get like too far into the weeds of it. And honestly, I probably wouldn't have understood it anyway because I spend time on the golf course and
Yeah.
not really fishing that much. But it doesn't matter. And I told him, I was like, dude, like no matter what industry it is, like we don't all like none of us know everything that you have to know to run a business when we
Right.
start. Like I still don't even know today.
Yeah, I'm still working
And
on it.
to your point of like people complimenting you, I mean, I was still writing paper checks to subs,
Oh, yeah.
like just out of a checkbook and paying people when Sean came on board. I mean, Showtime did over $1 million in business before we ever started like printing checks out of QuickBooks and tracking things appropriately, right?
Right.
Like, and sometimes you just have to, and not that I'm necessarily proud of like that elementary way of doing things or archaic way of doing things, but sometimes you just have to get going and then fine tune
Right.
things,
Yeah.
right?
In order to build a process, you have to start a process. And so
All right,
if
I
you can
like that.
start it, then you can fine tune it. But if you don't start one, then it's just chaotic. And then, it's just spinning in circles, and then things are out of
Yeah.
control by then. So it's
Yeah,
like damage control.
you start like self-doubt leaks in
Right.
because there's
Yeah.
one area of it that you're not efficient at, and yeah, it can be kind of wild. So all right, so you guys, you take that leap. You're like,
Mhm.
hey, we're gonna spend this winter kind of getting our business plan and everything in order, and then that spring of 2018 or 17, you basically took off.
It was 18. We started
Okay.
in 17, so
Okay.
18. And it took a while to get going. Um, there's a few hailstorms that year in Ames, Nevada.
Marshalltown.
I think Marcel and I didn't go up that far, but
Yeah.
we were in Ames and Nevada kind of trying to work those areas. And that was a tough scene to get into because there were some pretty established contractors up there. And so it's a pretty tight knit market in Ames anyway.
Okay.
So um but I got one phone call, um, just because another contractor was, and it was actually somebody I sold to at ABC. He was the builder. He referred me because he knew I started my own. This guy couldn't get anybody to do his roof for like 6 months, so he just called me. So I went out there and took a look at it,
Yeah.
put it together. Well, that one turned into like 10, and these are pretty nice houses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of got us springboard going.
Yeah.
Then it's like, okay, then we get rolling. And then I got a call for a repair. It's like 6 o'clock on a Thursday. The guy's like, "Hey, I got a leak. Can you come take a look at it?" I'm like, "I don't want to go to Ames. Look at this little leak. It's probably something dumb
Mm-hmm.
or something stupid like that." And I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna go. Lead's
Yep.
a lead.
Yep.
Whatever." So I get out there and I look at it. I was like, "Hey, you got hail damage. Just I didn't know if you knew that or not. It's up here. I fixed your leak. It's just a skylight that had an exposed shingle." And I said, "But you might want to just so you know, you have hail damage up." He's like, "Oh, okay. Can you go look at my mom's?" I was like, "Sure." Went and looked at his mom. Well, she owns like 25 rental houses. So it's like
Yeah.
we do them all.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the thing. It's like you never know who's going to be your biggest customer.
Yeah.
So it was just, and that kind of turned the whole year. And then I think we ended up getting a townhome complex later that year too. So it was just like,
Yeah.
it all worked out.
Well, and for people out there too that maybe if they're thinking about starting their own business, it doesn't have to be construction. Whatever the industry is, right? It can be applicable to
Yeah.
almost anything. Is sometimes you just have to do the things that seem like it's dumb to say that aren't going to be productive, but you have to do all the little things too.
Yeah.
You can't just every call isn't going to be the greatest thing ever, and then you just go hit home runs all the time.
Right.
Like you have to be willing to bunt. You have to be willing to just get a base
Well, you
hit.
couldn't get
Like,
anybody to come out and look at it. You got to
yeah,
be willing to do what other people aren't willing to do.
yeah,
Basically.
exactly.
So
I mean, we talked for quite a while in this inside these four walls about just anytime it seemed like we did something hard or maybe like there was the elephant in the room and we just went attacked it and
Right.
just like got it eliminated, like something good would just happen after that. Like
Even
it
if it's
just,
your mood, like
yeah,
just
right.
just knowing that that's done and
Yeah.
over with, and now you can breathe and move on to the next job,
Yeah.
and hopefully this one goes better. But chances are it probably won't.
Yeah. And if you tell him, hey, it'll be, a lot of times people also like to operate on like a convenience schedule.
Right.
And I know like starting Showtime, like right after that Durate show, I mean, there was plenty of Saturdays and Sundays. Like I
Oh, yeah.
remember driving to Cedar Rapids. So it was a 2-hour drive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you'd get over there and it might be like 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I know I got to get there before daylight's over, before
Right.
sun sets. And then I know I'm not going to be home
Yeah.
until like 9 o'clock after
Yeah.
kids go to bed. And it's not convenient and it sucks. And honestly, it's not efficient. It doesn't make sense. But to your point, what if you run into
Right.
that next job and you don't know when you're just starting something what could come? But the only thing you do know is if you don't do anything,
You're
nothing
missing.
good's going to
Right.
happen, you know?
And to that, you know, we would be tarping roofs or whatever till 9 o'clock at night in Cedar Rapids, and there was no power. It was pitch dark.
It was terrible.
It was
You couldn't
scary.
call
Like,
anybody on
yeah,
cell phone.
yeah.
Towers were down.
And so my wife's like, just stay there. I'm like, no, I'm gonna come home. Like,
Yeah.
I could stay here, but I'm like, why not just? It's a 2-hour drive. I'll just drive home.
Yeah.
Like, that way, see the kids in the morning, then go back to it. Like,
Well, and you living over on the east side of the metro is even a little bit closer. I had to go all the way to West.
yeah, that's true. That is true.
But yeah, I did too. I drove
Yeah.
home every night.
And
My goal was always I would try to leave like by 5-ish to get over there. But a lot of
Right.
times crews start around
Yeah.
7. And I'd try to get over there early. And my goal was always to be back home by kids' bedtime.
Right.
Just if I could. It didn't always work.
Yeah. And like you said, on the weekends, we were running dump trailers from job to job on Saturdays and Sundays at Grant and I. So
Mhm.
there wasn't a day where I'm like, hey, you know, you want to do this, Grant? You know, it's just like, hey, let's just go get it done. If we both work together, we might get it done by noon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Then you can still enjoy your afternoon.
yeah,
A lot of
exactly.
people don't realize that too. And I think I just want to make clear we're not preaching. This isn't a, hey, if you're
Right.
going to start a business, you should call us because we're experts. This is literally just if you start something, you go. And there is no plan B. Like
Yeah.
you go and you make things happen.
Yeah.
Like that's what you do.
I think what we're trying to also is that you're sacrifice things for the better of the
Yeah.
company, whether it's your time or
Yeah.
you know, sleep or whatever. I mean, you're
Exactly.
sacrificing that just well, one for the business and two for the job that you're doing, so it ends well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, and not to like go too far down this road, but even when I was pounding nails back when I still lived in the Mason City area, I mean, my goal was always because I don't even know. I think I was probably making by that time I was making like $19 an hour, I think. And then if we worked past 40 hours, my boss would pay us another $2 an hour. It wasn't your
like
wage and a
overtime, yeah,
half. It was because he couldn't necessarily like charge
or extra,
his
right? Because he's
customers
getting paid
out.
per square or whatever.
Yeah. And so he'd give us another $2 an hour. And so my thing was always, hey, that's $2 an hour more than I'm making right now.
Mhm.
And my goal was always on Saturdays, I'd work till noon. So I'd go in at 7, a lot of times hungover, a lot of
Right.
times tired, a lot of times maybe we had stuff going on that Jordan had to take the kids to on her own. But I was like, hey, and it got to the point where it was just a thing where she just knew. She's just like,
Mhm.
you're probably working Saturday. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm going to. If there's something I can do, I'm definitely going to.
Yeah.
You know?
And we try to get it done by Friday, and if it didn't get done by Friday,
Mhm.
then went to Saturday, and if it went to Sunday, it's just what it was. And
So you guys, let's talk a little bit about you're in the grind stage, right? Like
Mhm.
let's get this thing off the ground. 2020 obviously hits then with the Durate show. You guys are 3-ish years into business. Well, I guess it would have been like 2.5
Mhm.
seasons or whatever. But you guys are rolling. When does it feel like for you, or when did the shift kind of come where it was, all right, now this is going to be a little bit more than just Grant and I. We're going to bring employees on. And what I say is like, it seems like when you start getting employees, it's like, all right, now we're a real company. Like, when did that shift happen?
So we brought on um my brother as a salesman, and then one of Grant's best friend. He was going to help us sell too. Well, what we found out is we had too many salesmen and no production. So we talked to my brother because he's been like in the industry for a long time and asked him if he'd be interested in doing production. So he switched roles from salesman to production, full time production.
Okay.
So then we had 3 salesmen with Grant and myself, and then Tyler was our salesman, and then we had 1 full time production. So we're
Okay.
like, okay, this is a pretty good balance, you know. Even then, we'd still help with production just because we had, a lot of things going on.
Got to go
But
grab some extra material.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
help out. So, and then we ended up hiring somebody to help us schedule because we were out always selling that we didn't really have, we'd have to schedule everything at night. It's
Yeah.
like taking up, our nighttime scheduling and invoicing and everything like that. So
Yeah.
we're trying to build it so it'd free up, Grant and I's time so we could sell and then be home.
So to speak specifically to that, was it because Because when you look at bringing somebody on board, it doesn't always, like from a business standpoint, it doesn't always necessarily make sense at the like given time or like at that snapshot of the time that you're in at that time. It's like, but if we want to grow, then we might have to almost take a step back, right? So like, I just want to make it clear that these decisions that get made, first of all, they're not easy. It's not like you just look at a cheat sheet that's like, all right, we hit, we hit this revenue, so now we had to hire Charlie. You know, it's not like that. And so those decisions were those things that you and Grant just kind of talked about, like all the time, and it was just like, hey, it really feels like we need to bring this person on now.
Yeah, and like I said, we ran production together. We did the jobs, so we spent a lot of time together, and we would say, hey, this would be easier if we had this or this, and but to pull the trigger and dedicate money that we have, that's limited at the time, and still materials, labor, and everything like that, still limited. You got to take a step back on what you're trying to get out of it, just so you can grow a little bit. So basically, you got to take a step back to grow. And so those years, like I said, are planned. We're going into, hey, we're going to hire 2 salesmen this year. So, maybe if it was me and you, our goal would be here. But since it's more now, we still got to make enough money. But we're not going to make this much money now. The company's not going to make as much because we're paying. But next year will be our revenue year. And so that was kind of our mindset. On growth years, we know we're taking, our budget and what we're planning on making and cutting that down to pay people. But we're gonna make up for that the next year when we have all the parts and pieces in place.
When you're in growth mode like that, to talk on the personal side a little bit, just because I think there's a lot of people out there that can relate to, if you're a business owner, you're making decisions the best of your ability to make sure that the company grows and is sustainable and can continue to provide for not only you, but your family and then everybody else that's obviously involved with it. But what that means is when you're taking less income, specifically, you have to pay other people and it's got to come from somewhere, which means you take less. That might mean that maybe some family vacations don't happen. That might mean that instead of updating your pickup or your wife's, SUV or whatever that may look like, maybe we don't get a boat this year. We can't. And then, your kids are like, well, I thought we were going to get a boat. Whatever those scenarios are, what did that look like for you in your personal life? Was Kristen just kind of on board with, hey, like I understand whatever it takes to get it going, or were there some tough conversations there?
Yeah. I mean, so when I was in this process, she's growing at work too. Like she's hitting different levels of her success. So she's going up too. So she's not like, so she went from being a nurse. She has a nursing degree and an IT degree. So she combined them and help develop the electronic charting basically for Unity Point. So now she does a lot of things that I don't really know because she talks above me a lot. She's smarter than me. So she's like telling me what she does. I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds awesome. I know it's important and I know she, is successful at it. So, so she's got her own stuff that she's got, working away. And so she's supportive of me. She just says, if you got to do that, then you got to do that. And if we don't get to do this, then it is what it is. But she could see my vision. Which helps.
Yeah, that's hugely important.
So it wasn't like, what's this guy doing? Like, is he gonna, hurt us in the long run? She could see.
Is that something that, I mean, do you think that you guys have a good relationship in that sense because of, I mean, do you guys have fairly open communication just in terms of what it is that you want American Dream to kind of become and provide for you guys? Or is it just one of those kind of blind trust things where she's like, hey, like Andy's obviously my husband, I trust him, and whatever he feels like he needs to do, he needs to do.
Yeah, I mean, she probably thinks I don't talk near as much as I should, but just because
that's fair.
She's always like, I'm the last one to know this, but
yeah.
She goes on our trips and she sees what we've done, and she's around it every day. She knows, what we're doing, and she can see the levels that it's got to, so she's aware.
So those trips that suppliers take people on that do a lot of business with them or a fair amount of loyal customers and whatever, those are important because you're out there with your significant other. You get to mill around with other people and their significant others. And all of a sudden you start to find out like, hey, I'm not alone in this, and there's a ton of power in that. And I think that's why this conversation's healthy. Conversations that you and I and Sean and Grant have all had in the past are healthy for that reason. Because man, wandering through any of that stuff alone or feeling like you're on an island can suck, right?
Yeah, it could be a lonely place. So if to have just conversations after, even if you met and grabbed somebody for a beer after work, I mean, 20 minutes of that hour of that helps too. Just
Right.
hanging out and just talking to kind of the industry, what your day
Yeah.
was like, and even going to some of the events that we go to that we run into each other. It's always
Yeah.
good to catch up. So
Like, and you were talking, I mean, sometimes it's not even, it might be in passing where somebody mentions just, maybe it's a customer management software they use. Maybe it's a form of
right.
accounting style that they happen to follow and go with, and it may be not even a nugget that you're seeking, but you're shooting the shit. Next thing you know, it's like, oh my gosh, that's a good idea. You know?
And starting the business, like I said, I knew a lot of people in the industry, so I was not afraid to call them and ask for some advice.
You think that's yeah, that's a difficult thing for some people to do. I've never man, I to this day, I feel like I can gain something from this conversation, right? That I'm gonna learn from. And I've always prided myself in just being eager to learn. And I think it's important to not let your ego get in the way of becoming better by somebody else's advice.
No, I think if you see somebody that has success and you kind of want to follow that, you know, why not ask?
So there's we were laughing about it actually before we started shooting this, but the must be nice,
Yeah,
thing. And I think if you're trying to do something on your own and you see somebody else that's crushing it, instead of looking at it as a oh well, must be nice to just have what they have or whatever, maybe if you just take some time to even ask them how they
right.
got there or whatever, you might learn something.
I agree. I think it's easy to see the outside of things, but no one ever takes time to open up and see where how it started. So,
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
you get that all the time. So, you gotta say, yeah, it is nice. I mean, you can either go into it or just say,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah,
So,
because you can try to mansplain it or whatever the slang is that
but I
people
feel
use,
like when
but
people say it, they're trying to take a shot at you,
yeah,
and they think that whatever you've gained, you got it from nothing or
yeah,
from given to you or whatever.
right.
Not what you put into it, what you sacrifice to get it. So,
Well, and ultimately, if the truth is revealed, it forces people to look in the mirror. It's
yeah,
like, well, shit, what am I doing? And yeah, I mean, back to what we were talking about before. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're happy with your situation and you like just getting off at 5 o'clock, and maybe you're not a big person to take trips and go on vacations and do that stuff. I mean, hey, that's all fine too.
yeah,
This is just more or less if you are somebody that wants to change your current status, if you are thinking about starting your own company and don't really have that, you just need that last little push. I mean, it's just like then you got to find the other gear and you got to go.
yeah. Like I said, this was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
I was 36 years old. So,
Yeah.
or shit, I was older, 38. So,
Yeah.
there's never too late to
Right.
start an adventure. And not that I hit a plateau or anything. It's just I work for myself basically, and
Yeah.
I can control a lot of things where before I didn't have control over it. So
Let's talk about Andy Ray, the dad. I see your Snapchats all the time. Like you guys go get ice cream in the Razor, Ranger, whatever it
yeah,
is that you have. Um, you guys have a place out at the lake too.
Lake Ponderosa. Yep.
So we talk, and I've had to eat my words in my own home before. Of I have the business Derek, and then there's the home Derek, right? And if you're intentional or controlled in your growth in business, it's like, well, do we carry that home too? Do we focus on things at home the way we do in the business world? Because realistically, both of those have to coincide, right?
Right.
So do you think, much like your schedule with work, do you specifically set time aside to go on razor rides and stuff like that? Or what's that look like for you?
No, I mean, so my kids' schedules dictate a lot of our time together.
That's true.
She's got my 13-year-old. She's in club volleyball. Um, she plays sand volleyball. She played junior high softball this year.
Okay.
Then my little one, she's in gymnastics, swim lessons, basketball, all that stuff. So
Yeah.
a lot of that dictates kind of our schedule. But um, it's crazy because they just wanna hang out when they
Right.
so we do. We go to the lake. I like going to the lake because it's different at the lake. It's just a lot of teaching. You know, teach them how to drive the boat, drive the
Yeah.
razor. It's more learning. They're not out there on their phones. They're just out there enjoying
What's that
time.
Alan Jackson song? Drive, or
Oh yeah,
I can't,
Drive. Yeah,
is that what it
yeah,
was called?
yeah,
Yeah, like Daddy Let Me Drive or whatever.
yeah,
There are a lot of like just kind of life lessons you can
for
learn.
sure.
Yeah. And it doesn't feel like it's pressured. It's more or less, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're building decks, we're lighting bonfires. I mean, they're
Yeah.
in it. If I'm doing it, they're in it.
Right.
So it's not, hey, stand back, let me do it. It's all like, hey, let's figure this thing out. So
Have you guys had that place for a while, or was that a kind of a conscious like let's have this to be able to get away?
also during COVID,
Yeah.
I think us and everybody else in America bought a camper,
Right.
and so we would go to camping spots, and it got to a point where one, they were expensive, and two, it's hard to find.
Hmm.
And so if we found one, we'd have to go set up or whatever. Well, I was driving to Cedar Rapids one day, and I just happened to go down 80. Usually I take the back way.
Yeah.
And I just saw Ponderosa or Montezuma, and we knew some people up there. So I was like, I'm gonna just look and see if there's any spots up here, just park the camper. Well, it just happened to be that there was one already set up for a camper and everything else. And so I'm like, I text Kristen and said, hey, what do you think? She's like, no.
That's awesome.
I was like, well, just hear me out.
Yeah.
Let's just go look at it.
Yeah.
She goes up there and she's like, I don't know. I don't think we should. And I was like, well, just thinking of it as an investment. We're not gonna have to, find a spot. We can have
Right.
everything set up. It's not gonna take us all weekend to pack up, and we can just have it out there.
Yeah.
So I sold her on it, and next thing you know, we had it by the 4th of July, and we spent the 4th of July weekend out there together, and it was
Awesome.
awesome.
Yeah.
So
That's cool. We had a client meeting out at Lake Panorama
Yeah.
yesterday,
I
and
was jealous.
yeah, well, I mean, it was like just lucky, I guess, or whatever preparation and opportunity meet. But yeah, it was neat. And Jill took us out on the boat, and it was a really unique setup because the clients that Matt Klein, realtor, had these clients that were either looking at remodeling or building, and there's only a couple lots available out there. And this other lady that Matt Buman knows that has a place out there on the lake knew of a couple that would potentially be willing to sell. And so it was like her just kind of hosting us and taking us out on the boat, and literally showed these clients that weren't necessarily hers even, like
Right.
just like took us on a boat ride and showed them the lake. And but anyway, the point I'm trying to get to is when we were out there, Matt Klein and I were talking about the fact that like, man, it just feels like we drove 45 minutes to get there, and it felt like we were a whole
I
world
know.
away. It's like everything else kind of just like basically stopped almost,
Yeah.
it felt like, and you were out on the lake.
Yeah. And that's what we get out of it. It feels like we're almost on vacation for a weekend, and it's good to go disconnect from. I mean, even if I'm at home, I feel like I'm still at work, or
Yeah.
like close to work, close enough that, and not even work, just work around the house, or just day to day stuff that just reminds me of just stuff I need to get done.
Right.
Out there, it's just, it's just peaceful.
It's like you can't. It's probably easier to just, people always tell you like, don't worry about what you can't control or whatever. I mean, that's easier said than done.
Right.
Like if you're in proximity to it, it's tough to ignore it. So yeah, being out there, that is awesome that you guys have
But
that
then you
time.
start talking to people and they realize what you do, and they're like, hey, can you come take a look at this? And then on the weekends out there trying to look at, like,
Yeah.
they want you, hey, can you come look
Oh,
at it?
like from from the work. It's like,
Yeah.
God dang it, I'm
Yeah.
trying to escape that.
Yeah.
Like I love the business.
Yeah. But that's just comes with the territory. So you got to embrace it and try and enjoy it when people show up and ask you about your business. I mean,
Yeah.
what's there not to be excited about telling them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I tell you what, one of the coolest moments I think in getting to know you was getting to talk to a couple of your employees when we were at that HBA event last winter, and hearing the way people speak of you highly. It's awesome to meet people that um, you know have a belief in family, are go getters in business. You see people all the time on Instagram and TikTok and whatever. That's like, man, if you want to succeed at business, like you gotta be alpha male,
Yeah,
like fuck everybody else,
Yeah.
and you don't have time for family,
Right.
and it's just not true,
No.
And
I mean, I'd rather sacrifice other things than family to
yeah.
be successful. So
But I mean, is that something like I kind of want to close with this because for anybody that's watching this, Andy's an incredible person, and not only in his personal life, but to have employees, unprompted, just talk about you the way you do. I mean, is that something you feel like you've had to work on over time? Is it feel like it's just kind of who you are and comes natural, or
I think it's you just I don't know. It's just treating people nice, I guess. I
yeah,
don't
just
know.
don't suck as a person,
Yeah,
kind
I
of
mean,
thing?
just
Yeah,
try to treat people how you want to be treated. I think
yeah,
you do that, good things. I mean, so I try and teach my 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
Talk to people how you want to be talked to.
Right.
It's pretty simple, but I don't know. It's pretty crazy though that we talked about this that night at the holiday party, and it's all come full circle now.
Yeah, I was like, hey, dude, I think I might start a podcast, and like, this is what I'm thinking. You're like, oh, I definitely want to come on and chat. Yeah.
If anybody could do it, it would be you. So.
You know what's funny is honestly, and we can kind of like just close with this too, is getting this going was something that I had talked about for a couple of years, but honestly, it was like the team that kind of like pushed it over the edge. Sean was like, I'm gonna jump on and buy the domain.
Yeah.
Kaylee was talking about how I can do this for YouTube and like Spotify, and we got to find a name that obviously somebody else isn't using, and they all just kind of started going to work on it, and I was basically,
well, I think that
I was like, okay,
kind of what they believe in you too, like you could do it, so you should take that as a compliment.
That's true. Well, I appreciate that. So,
yeah,
awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, dude.
Yeah, it's been fun watching you guys grow. I mean, like I said, you guys have grown a lot the last couple of years. It's been fun to watch. So
yeah,
appreciate you having me on.
All pain and gain and all the fun stuff that comes with it, right?
I mean, what stress is it in building houses, right? It's gotta be easier than doing